Good day and thank you for joining CivilNet. Today we're in Stepanakert. It's the 9th of April, the day of the liberation of the town of Shushi. We're guests at the Foreign Affairs Ministry and we're speaking to Armine Aleksanyan, Deputy Foreign Affairs Minister. Thank you, Mr. Aleksanyan, for having us here. And my first question would be, given what happened in April, given these recent escalations, what's the evaluation? What's happening? Is this a breach of the ceasefire agreement? Is this a renewed war? Is this the failure of peace negotiations? In your evaluation, how would you brand this?
Well, we could say basically that until now, until April the 2nd, the ceasefire that was signed back in 1994 has been mainly preserved. Why do I say mainly? Because of course there was sniper shooting. Starting from the summer of 2014, there was already some sort of escalation whereby Azerbaijani side started using also artillery apart from just snipers. But I think that what happened in the early hours of April the 2nd, in the night of April 1st to the April the 2nd, it was a large-scale aggression by Azerbaijan that I think was very well prepared on their side. And in one way or another, because we were already getting used to too many diversion, infiltrations, by diversion groups, etc., I think we did not expect it to be to such extent, to have the scale and the scope that it had. And I think it was also unprecedented in the way that it did not only target the military objects, but actually it targeted the civilian settlements, whereby they used artillery just to target the civilian settlements, as a result of which we had also casualties among civilians. I would not say that, as you know, there was another oral arrangement made on April 5th, an oral arrangement to cease the hostilities. But I think the ceasefire was signed and it was in place, but this time it was violated in a very large scale, and I think that's why perhaps there was a need to reinstate that ceasefire. And if we want to have peace in the region, and I think international community also realizes that, in the face of mediators, the co-chair countries, I think that they should really press on implementing this mechanism for investigating the incidents of violations, whereby you would be able to say which side has started the violation and which side should take responsibility for it. I think this kind of measures would prevent further escalation of conflict. You know that both Armenian sides, Karabakh side and the Armenian side, have agreed to implement these measures, as well as agreed to withdraw snipers from the contact line, together with enlarging somehow the capacity, the mandate of the monitoring mission to make it more frequent or permanent. All these suggestions were unfortunately rejected by Azerbaijan, who probably had plans that he called to life on the night of April the 2nd.
And yes, but during the most recent visit to the region, the OSCE Minsk Group co-chairman in a press conference in Yerevan said that it was not in their mandate to investigate and look into who breached the ceasefire.
Well, because OSCE is such a mechanism whereby all decisions are taken by consensus, so to make this happen, we will need Azerbaijan's agreement, and if Azerbaijan is saying that it did not start the escalation, it is not to blame for it, then it should be really, if it has not, it should be really interested in implementing those mechanisms, because from now on everything points to them, because it was not handy for any of the Armenian sides to change the status quo on the line of contact. So far, things were more or less calm on the border. Of course, there was sporadic shooting, there were clashes sometimes, but it was not to the scale that we have today. But I think these events have also allowed us to find out for ourselves. Maybe it was a test for Azerbaijan to check our combat readiness or other sorts of reaction we are able to give to them. And thank God we managed to reinstate that we are here and we can throw back any sort of violations on our borders because we have our army. But I think for us it's also a time to think about the omissions or the failures that we have and try to work on them on all fields, internally, externally, in the military realm. And maybe I don't want to say that it was needed. Of course, it was not at the cost of so many losses. But it was a lesson for all of us, I think, to think about.
And taking into consideration this recent experience, what do you think are the things that we need to reconsider?
Well, I cannot talk for the army part. Thank God they're doing their job in the manner they need to. They should, rather. I have no doubts about our army, and I was even more, I wouldn't say surprised, but I was so excited and happy to see that there was such a unity on the very first day. Because honestly, I was thinking, okay, what is going to happen? But when I saw this unity coming from all the Armenians, not just inside Karabakh, whereby volunteers went to the Veterans Union in the square, and everyone wanted to go to the front line. And we had at the same time people coming from Armenia and even diaspora volunteers. This, for once again, showed that the spirit of the Armenian people all over the world is the same, and it has revived again, like it did back in 1990, in the early 90s, 1990s, 1991. So in that sense, I think it was a good sign. We realized that we are here, and we basically understood that our power is in our unity, in the sense that if we stand together, we'll do anything. And we managed to do that.
A lot of the times people ask me, and I wonder with this myself, how can civil society in Armenia and the diaspora help?
I think by raising awareness, mostly, because but to raise awareness, of course, we need the media, people like you. And I have to say that maybe compared to Azerbaijan, we handled media not so bad. Maybe more could have been done. I mean, these are questions that will need to be assessed, but at least we had a large number of journalists coming from different parts of the world on their own initiative. And all we had to do was create conditions for their work, basically to show them what is going on. And since we had nothing to hide, it was not a hard task. Just to let them go, to interview people, to go to the front line, see what is happening there, to see it for themselves. There was no need to do anything in that sense, apart from logistical support that we provided. So in that sense, I think media played a great role in informing the public what was going on, because when you are far away and you hear something, you imagine it in different scales rather than they are maybe. Many people thought that it's not safe to walk in Karabakh, while when they were shelling on the border, at the same time the road construction people were actually filling the holes and planting flowers on the sidelines, you know, in the street, which is also talking of the fact that these people have no intention to leave the place, or they don't see their future elsewhere. So they do the fighting and they do the creation, just like they did back in 1994, whereby after the war, when more than half of the infrastructure of Karabakh was not there, they actually started creating the statehood, not only physically, materially. I mean, if you also imagine the collapse of the Soviet Union and the collapse of the market, you know, transition to market economy, there was so many challenging facing the republic that had no experience of statehood. And they managed to actually have, they chose the way that it should be democracy, because these people wanted to self-determinate. They made their choice in 1991 by a referendum, and they started to create everything to deserve that, to show to the world also that we are here, we can organize our lives, we can have our state, we can have our civil society, our government system, and we will create it. And no one helped Karabakh in doing that. If many countries, Europe, for example, have helped Kosovo and other places whereby they poured millions of money and experts to actually help them to create that. Karabakh had done it on its own. On its own, I would not say, I mean, on its own, of course, taking most of the burden by it, but of course, supported by Armenia, expert-wise as well, and also diaspora in many, many issues. And I think that especially when we come to this, I think what we have to really use is the potential we have in diaspora. I'm not talking about money, I'm talking about human resource, about specialists, professionals that we have in many fields. Most of them are retired, for example. And I'm sure that most of them would like to contribute in one way or another. And I think it's a matter of organizing it, how to do it in the best suitable way so that both can benefit.
And the Karabakh conflict is very often being compared to Kosovo, and where we saw that people's right to self-determination prevailed. And my question would be, what do you think should be done internationally or around the negotiations table to bring the people's right to self-determination to the forefront of these negotiations? Because it's oftentimes being weighed against Azerbaijan's claims to territorial integrity.
Okay, if compared to Kosovo, and actually I would like to say that every conflict is unique in its way, and the Kosovo comparison, I would say, could be taken as a precedent for recognition that actually after the colonization process, the self-determination procedures have been in place and have been used. South Sudan could be another example. But unfortunately, the world is such that we're not talking about justice or moral values when it comes to recognizing states. Unfortunately, this is where real politics comes to play to the hands of one or the other states or many states, whether it is within their realm of the interest to recognize that state or not. And I think Karabakh people have gone a long way. Legally, they have solid basis for recognition because, first of all, they have won this recognition. They did not only voice their will that they want to be free and they want to decide their own future on their ancestral land, but they actually did everything according to the law. According to the then Soviet law, they had this right to get out of Azerbaijan and become a separate unit. The Soviet law allowed for that. And it was not against the international law either. The only problem we had, the international community itself wasn't so ready to perceive what is happening at the time. And if we are to, that's why they don't quite imagine, they recognize the 15 republics and the autonomous regions that were within those republics, and also made the self-determination movement or national liberation movement, they were kind of ignored because of the fact that there was not much awareness at the time. And after having recognized it, Azerbaijan placed the card of territorial integrity. It's saying to the world, you have recognized our territorial integrity, now stick to it. But we also have human rights, which is universal for everyone. No one said that Karabakh people are any worse than the rest of the world, and they're entitled to the same rights and liberties that every other person in the world living has, be it in the very south, be it in Europe, be it wherever. And if we go by these values, then international law provides for self-determination of peoples. And it provides for having this done legally. If we consider Karabakh, for example, after the referendum on self-determination, whereby 98% of the participants, registered voters, let's put it that way, voted for independence. After that followed about 5 presidential elections, now 6 parliamentary elections, and as many elections to local self-government bodies. In fact, Karabakh was the first country in the Caucasus, if I'm not mistaken, to elect a mayor in Stepanakert. So these people have shown that whichever decision they take, it has to be taken by popular vote. And this is the way things have been done in this country. Unlike Azerbaijan, whereby there is a clan, and whatever the dictator says, the rest follow. Whereby here, you can have, why did it come to escalation also in the first place? Because if you imagine a state whereby instead of preparing the people to peace, like we were doing here, in Azerbaijan they were cultivating hatred against Armenians. And this came to the highest of points whereby on the very highest level, the president of the country addresses the international public that have gathered in Baku for a summit and says, it's not only Karabakh Armenians that are our state enemies, it is the Armenians of the world that are our enemies. The term Armenian is already an enemy in that country. And they do it starting from the kindergarten, basically by poisoning the little children, whereby you make your own people like zombies. In Karabakh, the opposite has happened. I think we were really hoping for, you know, self-determination rights, and we saw these rights for others as well. And it went to the extent until now, if you read the MOD press releases, it never says an enemy has attacked, an enemy has done this. It always says the adversary, the opponent, the rival. It is just one word used, hakarakort, translated differently, but it never actually says enemy. And no single journalist in Karabakh does that. So in that sense, I think we have really moved back. We didn't do it to show to the world that, see how democratic we are. We have done it for ourselves, first of all for our people, so that when you have a line of contact and when you are in a position of no war, no peace, because we always have to realize that we signed a ceasefire, but we did not really sign an agreement on ending the war. These are different things. And that's why we always say we don't want war, but we're always ready to rebuke if such an occasion comes out. So here I think people always, considering that, they understood that if you don't provide for individual rights and liberties for people to be respected, no one is going to live here. They have to feel that they are the owners of this land, that their vote counts, their voice counts. And by providing this, I'm not saying that we created a perfect democracy. Not at all. We have a long way to go, and I think democracy is not a final destination anyway. And every country creates a democracy, a localized democracy, should I say. There is no special recipe for the perfect democracy. But you try to create a surrounding whereby the maximum of the rights of your people are respected and they feel free and happy in that country. And that's why I think there were so many who wanted to go to the border to protect those rights and liberties. Because I don't think that any Karabakhi would ever think of living in a country whereby no one cares for his right, like in Azerbaijan, or he will be taken to prison for saying the truth. So in that sense, they can't give up what they have taken. They have paid, we have paid a very high price for it. And that's why we say there is no return back. If you want to return back, you have to restore Soviet Union. If that's the choice for international community, to bring the Soviet Union back so that you can have Karabakh inside Azerbaijan, because that's the only period Karabakh was part of Azerbaijan. Karabakh was never part of independent Azerbaijan, be it Musavatist Azerbaijan or the Azerbaijan that was created after. So in that sense, what has happened was a normal development whereby, as a result of the collapse of the Soviet Union, two nations have been formed. The Nagorno Karabakh Republic with its people and the Azerbaijani Republic. And that's the reality that we have, and that should be faced. We did not do, it was not artificially created. People went to do that because they were forced. They felt that their rights have been discriminated. They felt that they have the right. If everyone has the right to decide their future, why shouldn't we?
Thank you, Ms. Aleksanyan, very much, and I hope this was very informative to the viewers.